and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. Okay, so I'm going to figure out today how I'm going to do this. It's so important that I think I'm going to make it open to more than just our Sangha, but it's a comparison of Buddhist scriptures and Jesus' teachings. And a scholar penned this book, Jesus Lived in India, and talked about his unknown life when he disappeared all those years from the time he left appeared in the temple when he was only 12 years old until he came back on the scene when he was 30. And all of the connections that have been drawn based on artifacts that have been found throughout along the Silk Road, Tibet, and into India. A lot of us think that the Mahayana teachings, and especially the Vajrayana teachings, emerged as a knockoff of the Buddhist teachings, but actually those teachings came from India, the Black princes of the South, who excelled in the cities. You know, one day Ananda and the Buddha were walking through one of his compounds, and he was pointing out different ones. He said, this one excels in discipline, in Vinaya. And he had a bunch of students around him. He said, this one excels in powers. And he had a bunch of students around him. And this one excels. And he went through the compound just pointing out his senior disciples and what strengths they had. And people who had a propensity towards, or an affinity towards that particular teaching and cultivation and ultimately accomplishment would gravitate towards that particular teacher. You know, you just didn't have one teacher like me, jack of all trades, master of none. They really focused in on what could be the highest and the best possible training that they could offer a student. One who had a propensity towards that, was drawn towards that. That's why I'm not so moved about those who reject Buddha Master. You don't have to reject it, just don't study. Just don't study and stuff. Find something that you can study that will advance you where you are with the understanding and the mindset and the interest that you have. But when you actually master some of that, the properties of prajna is that it breaks the delusion that we have, and it also humbles the sense of knowledge that we have. So like if our glass gets full, you know, and as we encounter prajna, it like just punches a hole right in the bottom of that glass of knowledge that we have and begins to empty out so that more can come in. So sometimes we're full. We have all that we can hold right now and understand and work through and practice, and there's no harm, no fault in that. But if one wants to go deeper, one wants to leave the rudimentary things and go into the deeper things of accomplishment, then there should be, and there is a place for them. And that's not to denigrate those who want to stay with something else or who want to learn something else. It's just knowing that we all have different minds, we have different experiences, we have different propensities, we even have different desires. You know, some things I want to do, some people don't want to do that. Some things other people want to do, I have no interest in that. And so it's not that I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong, but it's just each one finding and knowing his true self. Just don't fool yourself and think you're something that you're not. And then constantly ask yourself, is this enough? Is this enough for me? And am I truly seizing the essence of a precious human life? I mean, when I say I mean, this being could have been a cat, a dog, a worm, a rat, a raccoon, somebody always chasing you, catching all you trying to do is stay warm and find some food and meander into their house and they call the trappers for you. I mean, that's a hell round existence from a human standpoint, so just as there are animals who have more suffering than we have as human animals, we are also spirits that have more suffering than other spirits on other planes of existence. And other planes of existence don't have to be way over yonder. They can all be right here. That's why we can have hungry ghosts right here in our midst, along with humans, along with animals, along with celestial beings, along with terrestrial beings. And some people can see them and some can't. Some can feel them and some can't. Some believe in them and some don't. Does that really matter? I mean, if they exist, they exist, whether you believe it or not, or whether you want to believe it or not. So we don't have fear around things that are real, So if you encounter something, best to try to understand where it fits in the whole scheme of things and where you fit in the sense of safety from what may be terrorizing you internally. Our suffering comes from an internal terror, being internally terrorized, and that's what comes from outside. But as we learn to be with the vicissitudes of life, I had a tough time this morning, and I was thinking, I really don't want to do this, something I had to do this morning, but when I just got to the reality of the matter, the reality of the condition, and away from my aversion for not wanting to have to do it, the whole situation shifted for me, and it became like my pleasure to do this, and filled with gratitude that I could experience, or just get a taste of what something might be like for me down the road, or maybe not that far down the road. So looking at it through different eyes, I became grateful for being able to do something that will transform the way I feel about it. It will transform the way I think about it. And I can take what is a hellish experience and I can turn it into a pure just by my thoughts. And so this is the real practice. Like we can get around here Dharma talks and all of that. But it's what happens after the Dharma talk is over. What we do when we encounter the things that we're not happy about or that we don't want to do. And how we approach it. Not just when we encounter it, because we're going to encounter it, but how we will see it, how we can actually change the structure of appearances, how we see something, or how we hold it in ourselves, can turn something into a beautiful moment, a wonderful opportunity, a time of graciousness, a time of respect, and a time of gratitude for the experience, because it takes one closer to one's. How people say, I wish I was like that, but I'm not. It takes one closer to one's own wish for how they want to live and move and have their being in the world. And this is what's important. Of course, we have to work to live. We have to eat. We have to do all the things we have to do in the world. But what the masters pointed us to is how we execute those things. We might do the very same things, before we become inspired as we did before we became inspired. But it's not exactly the doing of the thing, but it is the motivation of it, the intent of it, how one actually carries it out. And I mean authentically, not like walking around off the smile, happy, but inside, you have aversion. But really entering into the rest that's in acceptance of the current situation. And now, the biggest thing is that it makes one fearless. It uproots fear. It uproots fear of the future. It even uproots fear of the present. But we have to stay vigilant. We have to stay with this all the time. Because every signal that we get from the world is telling us, do something else to be happy. Do something else to fix that problem. they never so much talk to us about, seeing it differently so that it's not a problem. And finding gratitude in every minute is telling you how you can escape this, escape that, do away with the other. But all of that is external. But as one begins to develop internally, one gains a confidence, a kind of power begins to cook in them, and they are able to surmount difficulties. And one then becomes not only free internally, but one becomes a great example to others in the world. What better gift can you offer the world than that? To do your own work and to see the results in your own life is perhaps the greatest gift, the greatest teaching that you can offer to others. So this study we're going to do is, if anybody wants to try to get ready for it, I think it's probably going to be a day long.
It's a documentary on this, Kanawati.
Yeah,
I just saw it, I think, on YouTube.
there is one.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the same guy, but
There's
it's
two
about that.
or three. One is called, I can't remember what it's called, but it is a
Yeah, I
documentary.
just saw it.
And I had a book, I have to find it, I think it's out on the shelf, somebody could look for it for me. It's called The Jesus Sutras, and these were writings that they found spoken by Isa, they call him Isa, who came, along the Silk Road from the East, and and it has the proofs of all of the kinds of memorials, writings in stone and things like that. But there's something else I'm trying to get to in this comparison, and that it really has to do with Buddhist training, and the sutta that I want to take it from is the Lalita Vistara. Lalita Vistara, Lalita Vistara. And it's a sutta of the Savastagardens, that would be like the Tibetan sect. And it, but what we like about it is that in one sutta, it has almost all of the teachings of Jesus in it, so that one knows where they came from. And it starts to build the correlation of 500 years before Jesus, the Buddha gave these teachings. And so if you put the New Testament teachings against the Old Testament, you get one version of what the teachings are actually saying and what they mean by reference. If you put them against the Dharma, you get a different understanding of what they say and what they mean by inference. And so I think, and the reason that I want to bring it up is because it helps us to have the overcoming respect for the master, and how it takes you much further than just knowing things intellectually. It's like having the love of a parent, and one understands their own mother and father, and as opposed to a stranger who's also an adult, who may even come and live in your house, or who may even be responsible for taking care of you, but without the development of really knowing them on the inside. And so your respect for the stranger may not be as great as your respect for your parents. Therefore, you can take the advice of your parents in a greater way than you can the stranger. So I'm talking about building affinity with the teacher. And when you do that, it has a certain power of its own that is unleashed, and that's what transmission is all about. That like when you say it to me, like I get it in a really deep way. But when she says it to me, like I hear something, and I'm okay. But if something sparks, when you say it, but that has to do with the respect that I have for you. It has to do with the love that I have for you. It has to do. And so these are real things. These are not like touchy-feely, also ran things, but it's perhaps the most important aspect of spiritual training is the respect that one holds for their master. And so as we're going into a lot of Buddha Master's teachings, I want to lay that foundation so that you can get the most out of the teachings. Okay, so now we're starting a new book today, No Time to Lose, A Timely Guide to the Way of the Bodhisattva. I'm not sure whether Pema Chodron did a commentary on, I think it was chapter 9 or chapter 10, which is the actual treatise guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. And she had said in this book that demanded its own book, but she went through everything else in this book. And so this book is more of a preparation for you in training us how to think, how to hold things in our minds, so when we encounter them, we can clearly see what they are. Sorry. No, I just don't want to sit up here. So I suggested that everyone purchase the book. I'm pretty sure this book is not available for download. You could download it? Oh, wonderful. So if you don't want to buy the book and have it in your library, you can download it. It's called No Time to Lose by Pema Chodron, and your assignment is going to be to read the first 52 pages on your own. This is developing clear. People like us can make a difference in the world, and we think that no difference can be made. Bad people are so good at being bad. Good people are not that good at being good. Because they believe that badness works better for them than we believe our goodness works better for us. And so we need to strengthen ourselves around what we say we believe and what we embrace so that we can get better at being good than bad people are at being bad. So the first chapter deals with developing, is encouraging us that people like us can make a difference. But sadly, we're so preoccupied with our own comfort and security that we don't give much thought to what others might need or might be going through. And so it helps to kind of cause us to reflect on how much we want the world to be different. People want to see, want to ensure that everybody has a place to live. Songs not in my neighborhood. They want to make sure that, that they have, all kids have equal opportunity to learn songs that wrote my child's school. And these are the kinds of ideas that we harbor deep inside, that cause a conflict within us around our own right standing or right understanding. I know you're keeping track, so you need to let me know 10 minutes that I think that'll give me enough time. So I have to take point of view, so the doctor didn't have to be at 1:20, so I'm gonna close early today. And so this helps us to start thinking about where we really stand, so we won't fool ourselves. We have to really know ourselves. And it doesn't mean that we are a bad person, it just means that we have not cultivated sufficiently a certain level of bodhicitta, that's all. Even though I share all of this, I'm confronted all the time, with things. Sometimes I want to do something, or people will bring them here, and I say, well, then it'll destroy our harmony, and we'll no longer be able to teach the Dharma, because of this movement, take a seat, and we'll just be constantly, dealing with other issues. And so sometimes we have to make choices just because the circumstances of how they are, or because our own development is not at the place that it can handle that thing, and still be able to do what we have to do. So when you're challenged with that, we don't have to like flagellate and beat ourselves up. We just keep working at looking at what is the highest kind of cultivation, and some of that will shift, some of that will change, or we'll find another way, to another way to fix that. I'm constantly aware now of some things I say, that like just come from way back. Like I said, another way to skin cat, and that's a terrible saying.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really is, and I'm sure, how about it, it's something that everybody understands what that means, but really we need to get new languages sometimes, and so I'm very cognizant of that right now. So, but that's just my thing, that's not for y'all, okay? Developing clear intention is the second chapter, and it speaks of the excellency of what you achieve. If you don't think something is excellent, you don't give it that much value or worth, but when you think it's excellent, then you incline yourself to it, you give yourself over to it, and then you can get out of it the fruit of the benefit that it offers. So we can be doing or thinking about or studying the same things, and if one person has a great worth and a great value, and for the not so much, So who do you think is going to really get the juice out of it? It's going to get the quality, the benefit out of it, the one that it has meaning for. Or even if you come into a study and it really doesn't have meaning for you, all the time that's what learning is all about, right? So we don't always agree coming into something. Hearing something new that rubs up against something old creates an obstacle right there, But if we will develop the attitude that, one time the Buddha just had to tell one of the disciples, listen to me. He said, I'm the one who knows you don't know. If you think you know, but it just constantly, well, I don't feel that way, I don't think that way, contradicting. You don't have to waste my time with this. You don't have to do it. He said, but if you really want to know, I was working on something for Little Master a few weeks ago, and it just seemed like every single thing that we did, there was still a correction with it. Every single. Finally, I was getting frustrated, and so so I was letting the translator know that I was getting frustrated with all of this, and she went on and relayed the message to the those in his organization that work with this, and they sent back one message that said, "If you want our help or not." That was it. That's all it said. It said, "If you want our help, we will give it." And we had written a song, and we had our lyrics, and we had our proper order, and a verse, and then a refrain, and then a verse, and we like following all the rules of how to write a song, and they came back with something. I said, this is not a song, this is a Dhamma talk. Nothing rhymes, nothing, and I'm just arguing, for our case and some words we use, and I'm saying that actually is Dhamma, maybe not on your level, but on the level for the people that we're going to be singing this song for, so everything, I'm just coming back one thing after another in my frustration, and they just said, listen, if you want to help, we will help. That's how they responded to me. And I said, yes, I do, of course I do. And that broke everything that was rising up in me, everything that was the frustration, the obscuring the great work that we have an opportunity to do, everything that broke it right there. And then suddenly, where we couldn't seem to make the lyrics fit into the music, they fit perfectly into the music. suddenly, I mean, everything that was an obstacle became not an obstacle, you know? But what it took was a radical honesty tied into what I really hold to be true myself. And when those two things came together, it broke that power of ignorance over me. And then everything became just as easy to carry out. So when you come up against obstacles in your life that way, you have to look at things and look at your own attitude and the hindrance that your attitude brings to resolving a situation. So that was the lesson I learned. I mean, I'm learning lots of lessons right now. So the next chapter that you're going to read at home is Preparing the Ground, Confessions. And in chapter 2 of The Way of the Bodhisattva, Shantideva introduces the sevenfold offering, 7 practices that prepare the mind and heart for awakening. They're traditional methods for gathering merit, but I don't like to talk that much about gathering merit because we're not doing something to get something. It's just that when we do certain things with the right attitude and the right effort, then it bears its own fruit. So merit is gained, but we're not doing something to gain merit. Everybody clear with me on the difference in that, right? So he talks about these 7 practices. To the Buddhas, those thus gone, and to the sacred law, the Dhamma, immaculate, supreme, and rare, and to the Buddha's offspring, oceans of good qualities, that I might gain this precious attitude, I make a perfect. I mean, just listen to the beauty of it. Listen to the richness of it, the depth of it. It's an attitudinal thing where one is deciding what is precious to them, what is meaningful to them. And it speaks of a yearning, a readiness to receive, be able to receive what is offered, you know. It's sort of like the difference between the Cadillac and the Yugo. You know, a lot of times at the store, we have people, you know, like they want to buy these designer things, and we have them at really, really cheap, so that they can enjoy some good things, but on the less than wealthy folks, peoples, you know. And it's still not enough. They want it for nothing. And then I recognize that they don't really appreciate the value of something. And I won't go any lower, they just can't get it. You know, but when they come back and they can have appreciation for it and that it does have value, and it does have worth, and I can see that in their attitude, then you know, I work a good deal. I work a good deal for them so they can have it. Sometimes people want something and I give it to them. You know, but for me, it's all a practice in attitude. I could say attitude and gratitude, but just stay with attitude. So this practice consists of 3 parts: the special object of offering, right? The special intention, and the special offerings themselves. The special object of offering are the 3 jewels: the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And that's who the Buddha's offspring is like us, and especially our teachers. Yeah. And then it talked about the Dhamma, or the sacred law, or the natural law, and that's the law of what? Cause and effect. Yeah. The point here is a resonance of wakefulness, being awake, being attentive, knowing the specialness of the triple gem and the special intention. So making these offerings is to gain the precious attitude of bodhicitta, the awakened heart. And then he goes on to say, and these are our ways that we do in the Mahayana and the Vajrayana practice. You know, it's not all so much mental but it really starts with opening the heart. And so we do these kinds of prostrations, and we do, and we make these, like the song Incense Burning, it sets one up, if you could just imagine it, that we're thinking that all space is filled with the fragrance. What is the fragrance? The fragrance is it's what's coming off of our lips. And what's in our heart and in our mind when we utter these words, that's the fragrance. It's filled with an attitudinal reverence. All space is filled with the fragrance. And when that fragrance goes forth, all others smell it from afar. And so we're drawing to us all of the heavenly beings. And if there were no heavenly beings, if mind is chief, whatever we think and ponder on becomes the inclination of our mind, then we're still creating a pure land right here where we are. Even if there was no heavenly, even if there are no heavenly beings, we're creating a world right here with our own thoughts, with our own heart, our own intention. So when you're involved in difficulty or controversy, even if you have to handle your business and you have to do what you have to do, that one needs to go into handling that business with this kind of attitude. It's like you don't have to go away mad, you just have to go away. It's like, being able to do what needs to be done, but you don't have to be inside to carry it out. Instead, you could be carrying it out and have great remorse simply because, like, if somebody is offending you or lying on you or doing something, and you know how we can get angry about that, But he says instead we should have great sympathy because every person is the owner of their own karma. So when that person is doing something to harm or hurt, or they're lying or whatever, that some regret should arise and sympathy arise from you because right now they're building their karma based on the law of cause and effect. And you think like how much they're going to suffer for doing this thing against you, And that helps you to be able to tolerate a slight, overlook a fault, or even to handle something, but handle it in a way that inside you're not seeking justification, you're not, you're not all wrapped up in justifying and liberating oneself. The liberation comes in this practice, this level of practice. The liberation comes when one truly has the heart of a Buddha that can recognize when anyone does wrong or does harm to another, then there is a price they pay for that based on the law of cause. And so you can have compassion for them, sorry for them. Now just, like whatever they say, just don't let it be true. And that's an attitudinal difference, you see what I'm saying. But as you do this over and over and over, and as you particularly look at the first thing that it does, it helps you to accept the things that come into your life. I was watching there's a series of documentary going on right now about Asheville, and they were talking about how, I think it's on the 5th series now, how a particular real estate company combined with a supposed nonprofit agency, and the woman is an attorney, and she's supposed to help people in difficulty. But what she does is she goes and speaks to them only to offer to help get them out of trouble, and convinces them that there's no way that they can can hold on to their properties or whatever, but you can make it so that, there won't be a judgment or people coming after them and gets them to sign over the properties, for the guy. And it was just story after story after story. And sometimes like a $200,000 house that was left to them by their parents, and the person got it for $675 in back taxes. And all of these things. And I thought, I come out of banking and real estate, and that's what we were trained to do. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And that's how I lived my life before I found the home. So I mean, like the brag was on how cheap you could get something from somebody, how much money you made on this deal, how, and the flips and all of that kind of stuff. And so I was thinking today that I'm having an issue with the city, with the uh, Office of Development around the zoning, for this property. And I said, that is just cause and effect. Just because I've had a change of heart over the last 30 years, I mean, I didn't do those things. Something is ripening. Well, thank goodness it's ripening at a time that I'm not perplexed. Like I can understand that I have some fruit ripening, and so I just accepted, like in that way. And I sat there and I wept. I wept because I was like those people 30 years ago. I was like that. There's nothing I can do about that now. Just karma comes. But when difficulty, it helps me to know that when difficulties come in your life, this is the preciousness of the teaching. You don't have to say somebody out there is trying to do something to me. You have to know that nothing comes in your life that you don't have a calm for. And that's this idea, and if we don't have that, then we'll think that because we're good people now, only good things should come into our life. We'll misunderstand the law of cause and effect. And that's why we have to be able to be with the vicissitudes of life as they come, the praise, the blame, the loss, the gain, the pleasure, the pain, the blame, and the shame. That's it. We have to, because they're everything that we thought, everything we've done, whatever is in this mind stream that ripened, that produced us in this incarnation, this purpose, so it just rolls on. But in time, as we just allow those things to come without breaking down over them, without being attached to them, then you have the effect and it's done. It's done, it's over. And it doesn't mean that, that you don't have good karma ripening right behind that. That still accomplishes what you wanted to accomplish, just not in the way that you thought of it. So you have to have faith and believe in the good that you do, that it also bears its fruit. And so that's how we move through life, not being too moved by things when they're bad, not being too moved by things when they're good. Not getting prideful around, our purity, not having an expectation that good should always be coming to me. I mean, I haven't thought about any of that longer. I've confessed it many, many, many times. You've heard my stories, no need to repeat. But still, when there's a karma ripening, like I want to reject if there's anything, not good, I want to reject that I have any culpability in it. I'm a good girl, I am. But if you can't hold it that way, then you're not going to see the reality of cause and effect. And so you won't have the mind and the heart for renunciation that's necessary to truly wake and become free. And so, so it goes on, I offer every fruit and flower and every kind of healing medicine and all the precious things the world affords, with all pure waters of refreshment. Every mountain rich and filled with jewels, all sweet and lonely forests, groves, the trees of heaven, garlanded with blossoms and branches, heavy laden with fruit. Let's get this idea in mind. He's offering the best of everything that we think is good in this world, that is beautiful in this world. That's, you know, and who is he offering it to? Hmm? Who's he offering it to? Who? No, he's offering it to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Thank you. And he says, I hold all of this before my mind, and I offer it to the Supreme Buddhas and their heirs, and make it a perfect gift. I am empty-handed, destitute of merit. I have no other wealth. But you protect us, you whose thoughts are for the good of others only, in your great power, accept this offer. So when I come in, you know, the minute I turn my mind to an invitation and an exhortation and a thanksgiving, you know, for holy beings, I completely shift and I'm in a different place. And so when I'm seeing incense burning, all spaces filled with the fragrance, all blue the smell from afar, auspicious clouds gather, and literally clouds gather, bringing multitudes of holy beings draw close. And it's our incense that in the Bible they talk about, because they would sacrifice animals, right? Bullocks and lambs, they spoke of in the tabernacle of David. In the tabernacle of Moses, that's what they offered. They offered the animals. In the tabernacle of David said, no longer offering animal sacrifices. We offer the calves of our lips, the fruit of our lips, giving praise. And it said that the glory cloud, the power of the presence of holy beings would be so great that the priests could not even stand to minister. And they offered the medium of music. I'm going to give a teaching on music, and talked about the outer court, outside the fence of safety, and coming into inside the gate, and that's where one is happy and thankful for things that they get. And then they go to the inner court, and that's where they're no longer so busy being thankful for things that they get, but they're thankful for the gift. And then we would go to the brazen altar, and that's where one would have been so moved then that they say, make my life an offering of worship unto you. Take my all and move me to magnify your name. You know, this name, it speaks of character. You know, to have the same character. And that's where one is now divesting oneself. You know, and as they do that, it's like giving oneself away. There's a song we sing, I give myself away so you can use it. And it doesn't mean like you just make yourself a doormat, but it's really coming to the end of oneself. I'm talking about not just saying the right words, not saying the right words in front of certain people, but like when one inside loses oneself, then one finds oneself, the true self. And so, and then from there, and so you're offering the fruit of your lips, giving praise, and you're laying yourself down. I give myself a sacrifice, as a sacrifice of worship. You worship me worthy. And this is for the enormous teaching, the gratitude, and clarity that comes into one's life through the teachings put into practice, not just heard. It causes a washing and a refreshing within oneself, a cleaning and clearing of one's consciousness so they can live a good life and they can die without regret. It takes away the fear of dying. And one starts to see the truism in the teachings is better the day of one's death than the day of one's birth. And so you see what I'm saying? This is a heart cultivation. This is something different than studying and regurgitating and giving it back and putting the circle in the round hole and the square in the square peg. It's not. It's something entirely different than that. And it's real. Sorry, it's real, and it becomes the substance of your life. And then one can truly give oneself. One can truly enter into the bodhisattva aspiration. And one can choose or seek or live out the highest essence of precious human life. So this is what I want to end with. And this is a whole different way of understanding the Dharma. It's not a Dharma that we fit into our lives, how to make happy. It's the kind of Dharma we fit our lives into. And for a true transformation, and not a lot of people want this. They want to know how to be happy with it. They want to relieve stress. They live their life and then they want the stress to be gone. He said, I'm good for that to happen if there has to be a change. Change how you see things, how you hold them, how you understand things, how you work with others. It says, the Buddhas and their Bodhisattva children, I offer them myself throughout my lives. Supreme courageous ones, accept me totally. For with devotion, I will be your servant. For if you will accept me, I will be a benefit to all beings, and I will be freed from fear, and I will go beyond the evils of my past, and ever after turn my face away from them. Learn how to stop doing the things that you do, develop a devotion around these kinds of thoughts. And they will uproot the previous thoughts that one had. So I'm already up to page 30, but you read the whole thing, and next week you can read Transcending Hesitation, which starts on page 53, that's chapter 3, and we will discuss chapter 3. Let me see, can we get through? We'll probably only get through chapter 3, Transcending Hesitation. No, we're doing the practice right now. We're working with the Mahamudra liberation. And but the people who generally work with the Mahamudra liberation are already well trained in all of this, And because we, those of us who have not practiced these kinds of practices, or had an introduction to them through other spiritual disciplines, there's a little bit of backtracking that we have to do to enhance our capacity to experience the benefits of it. So we're going to do these concurrently while we're doing the Mahamudra practices. But this is really like the foundation that you need to understand the Bodhisattva. Okay. So if we get through Transcending Hesitation next week, we will, using our intelligence, will be the next one, and that'll be really good for people who have a resistance to this kind of talk. So So he comes at us from both ends, the intellectual way and the way of the heart. Many people don't have any peace, many harm comes to you, danger, and you always be able to be inevitable difficulties.
Thank you.